Hello and welcome back to John Doyle Radio. Okay. So, what we're watching today is called Boys Beware. Boys Beware is a PSA from 1961 that talks about the dangers of the homosexual menace. And what's a better time to watch this old PSA, which helped shape a lot of people's perception of gay people, than Pride Month? Now, something to note about this. For us, we're going to view this and we're going to see this as gross, silly, and stupid. How anybody could be tricked by this should feel ridiculous to you. But after watching Reefer Madness and seeing how silly that was, and knowing how that helped shape decades of drug policy and views of marijuana for years upon years, this is something of a similar fashion. This doesn't have the same impact, but it's just one of many PSAs and promotional material around the issues of homosexual. Now, besides that, I also want to say that for many people, this is the only interaction they had with homosexuals in media, unless they were in a mocking manner, meaning that this is the only educational piece many of them have seen of homosexuals or gay people, LGBTQ plus people, period. And many of them, due to the times, it's the 1960s, don't know any gay people in their life. So this is the only interaction, many of them, and the only learning material for many of them that they have with people in the gay community. Just wanted to make that clear before we watch that. So remember, the people who were watching this at the time, this was their only interaction with queer media for most of them. Why is this so low? Produced with the cooperation of the Inglewood Police Department and the Unified School District. So this wasn't some just indie film.
Lots of young people hitchhike. Seems like a good way to get from one place to another. But sometimes there are dangers involved that never meet the eye. Let's take the case of Jimmy Barnes. Jimmy played baseball all afternoon and he didn't feel like walking home, so he decided to thumb a ride. He'd done it 100 times before, and he didn't think anything was unusual when the driver struck up a friendly conversation. In fact, he seemed like a real nice guy. He asked Jimmy if he played baseball in the park often. Jimmy told him they practiced 3 times a week and played a rival group on Friday afternoon. The stranger was a good listener, too, and it only seemed minutes before they pulled up in front of Jimmy's house. When Jimmy got out, the stranger gave him a friendly pat. Then he told him he'd see him again, as he always drove by the park on his way home.
It was a queer pat. It was really gay.
Sure enough, the following day when Jimmy finished playing ball, well, the man was there waiting.
He's back.
They stopped at a drive-in and the stranger treated him to a Coke. During their conversation, he told several off-color jokes, but Jimmy had heard others before and, well, it made him feel big to so easily win the confidence of an older person. The following Saturday, they went fishing together. By now, they were using first names. Ralph said it was more friendly. Jimmy hadn't enjoyed himself so much in a long time. Then during lunch, Ralph showed him some pornographic pictures. Jimmy knew he shouldn't be interested, but, well, he was curious. What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person.
This is the perception that it gives gay people. That the sickness that this person has isn't that he has pedophilia or pedophilic tendencies. If this was a PSA about pedophiles, then honestly, this would be perfectly fine. This is a PSA about homosexuals. So right off the bat, it has equivocated homosexuality with pedophilia. And so the long-standing stereotype about gay people being pedophiles was perpetuated by media like this in the 1960s and way before. So, just to be clear, it is making the argument that gay people are inherently not sick, and that homosexuality is a sickness. It isn't something that you're just born with and you have. It is a sickness that infects you. Maybe it infects you through molestation or whatever they're going to allege. And that homosexuality is just pedophilia. It's the same thing. And so when you see a lot of people like today try to equivocate the two, or you saw a lot of it during the fight for gay liberation and Stonewall, or all the way up to the fight for gay marriage, this was something that was constantly through at gay people, a stereotype slowly shoveled into their brain by media like this.
Who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex. But by now, Jimmy felt a fondness for Ralph, and they continued to go places together. Ralph was generous and took Jimmy many interesting places and did many nice things for him. He bought presents and even gave him money, but payments were expected in return. You see, Jimmy hadn't recognized Ralph's approach soon enough. When Ralph first asked Jimmy to go fishing alone, he should have discussed it with his parents or teacher. Finally, Jimmy told his parents, and they reported it to the juvenile authorities. Ralph was arrested, and Jimmy was released on probation in the custody of his parents. But
also, I don't know why he would be released on probation, as if somehow Jimmy, who was preyed upon, would have did anything wrong. But again, the point here is not to actually have like a deep talk about homosexuality. It is just to equivocate the two with pedophilia. That you need to beware, boys, beware the homosexual. Look out for them. They're going to prey upon you.
All homosexuals are not passive.
And the thing is, they don't do this. They don't have this logic for any other group. That if they see like just a heterosexual male, they don't have this idea that girls beware, the heterosexual male shall prey upon you. They think there's something that's especially special about the homosexual experience that makes them pedophiles. No evidence for this. There's no science for this. Nothing whatsoever to say that a homosexual is inherently a pedophile of any sort. But that's what the whole PSA is about, even though it's just talking about homosexuality and not pedophilia.
Some resort to violence, as in the case of Mike Merrick. In the heat of competition, no one noticed the man who sat and watched. And when the game broke up and the others left, Mike decided to stay and practice a little longer. The stranger joined him. He was friendly and, well, it was better than playing alone. But after a few shots, Mike realized he had already overstayed his time and suggested he better leave. The stranger told him if he'd like to stay longer, he'd be glad to drive him home when they finished. Sounded great to Mike. Chance to play longer and get a ride home, too. When they finished, the stranger told him he'd make a fine player someday if he got lots of practice. The companionship, the praise, the friendly attitude dispelled any misgivings Mike might have had about going with a stranger. He probably never realized until too late that he was riding in the shadow of death. But sometime that evening, Mike Merrick traded his life for a newspaper headline.
So far, the two depictions of homosexuals in this film have been the first one, a pedophile who preys upon the youth by giving them goodies in exchange for sex, and the second one is a rapist child murderer. That is the two depictions of homosexuality we are in 2/3 through the film. Again, the point of this film is to make pedophilia, rape, violence, predatory behavior all equivalent with the homosexual experience and what a homosexual is. Therefore, and remember, as I said at the beginning of this film, the vast majority of people, this is the first time in their lives that they've seen like a in-depth like documentary about like what is a homosexual. And for many of them, this is the only interaction they've had publicly with homosexuals, as in they probably know gay people in their everyday life. There's a lot of people that you know in your everyday life right now that you don't know are gay, even if today people are more open and proud about it, as myself, right? But for a very long time, I streamed on this channel and you guys had no clue it was gay for at least a year and a half almost. So, but those people aren't coming up to these people and saying, hello, I am a homosexual. Therefore, they don't know they know gay people. And for a lot of them, what they see is this is their first depiction of gay people that they see. That isn't like just some mockery in like media making gay people the butt of the joke. And what it depicts gay people as is predatory, violent, child molesters, and those are the things that they make equivocate with somebody being gay.
As Denny and Jerry got the papers,
and so imagine you are a gay person in the 1960s. We'll say a year after this came out, 1962, 1963, and you desire to live a normal life. Of course, you want to love someone, you want to love a man. We'll assume this person's a man, right? And your family has seen this film, and this is their only interaction with queer people in media. This is it. They don't know any gay people in their day-to-day life. They haven't met any gay people that they know of while working. They haven't seen any, like, read any queer literature of any sort. They were not at Stonewall. And imagine they find out that you're gay. In their mind, what they're going to think is, oh God, not only is this going to be difficult for my child to live a life as a homosexual, they're also going to think, you have a sickness, therefore you could be cured. So this is laying some groundwork for things like conversion therapy. They're going to think that you might be violent by nature when going after people. Because of the second example, they might think that you are predatory, that you are a pedophile. That is something that is being pushed consistently throughout this film, is that gays are pedophiles. So they think you're a sick, violent pedophile. Immediately when you told you are homosexual, that's what they think, that you are a sick, violent pedophile. That is the only interaction they've had with gays in media, and that's what they're going to think when you say that. So they're going to think you're admitting to be a sick, violent pedophile. Not very surprisingly, this leads to a lot of people being kicked out of their homes, losing their jobs, and being thrown out, completely disowned by their families. Very few have the education necessary to know exactly what actually is someone who's gay. Like, that isn't a sickness. This was actually something during the Cold War. There was a lot of gay people who worked for the government, and I think this was called like the Velvet Purge or something. But what would happen is the government actually looked for the gay people in it to specifically find out they were gay and then fire them because they were scared that the Soviets would discover the homosexuals in the government and then blackmail them into sending them information. Therefore, the American government knows that the society that's in the United States is so homophobic that just by somebody knowing you're gay, they could blackmail you and extract information from you. So not only are in that terrible situation, but then they immediately lose their jobs.
Ready for Jerry's afternoon delivery.
Actually, let me look this up. What was it called? The Velvet Purges or something? Velvet Gay purges. The lavender scare, I thought Velvet. The lavender scare was a moral panic during the mid-20th century about homosexual people in the United States government and their mass dismissal from government service. It contributed to and paralleled the anti-communist campaign known as McCarthyism and the Second Red Scare. Gay men and lesbians were said to be a national security risk, and communist sympathizers. Don't know how communism and homosexuality are like the same thing, but that happened too. So you're a gay, pedophilic, violent communist. That's the stereotype, which led to a call to remove them from the state employment. It was thought that gay people were more susceptible to being manipulated, which could pose a threat to the country. The Lavender Scale, the federal government's official response to both a visible lesbian and gay community and a perceived homosexual menace, normalized persecution of homosexuals through bureaucratic institutionalization of homophobic discrimination policy. Former U.S. Senator Alan K. Simpson has written, the so-called Red Scare has been the main focus of the most historians of the period. A lesser-known element, and one harmed far more people, was the witch hunt McCarthy and others conducted against homosexuals. So, I also want to say that this was not the only thing that happened due to films like this and stereotypes like this being pushed. There was also legislation pushed in California, and we talked about Harvey Milk earlier today when talking about Steven Crowder's comments about Harvey Milk being an AIDS-ridden homosexual. Even though he never had AIDS and died before the first case of AIDS was, I believe, discovered in the United States in 1981. But, and there's no record of him having it. But Harvey Milk fought against something. 1 second. If we go to Harvey Milk, look him up quick, and we scroll down to his career. In here should be one of the campaigns. Let's see if we can figure this out. Cheech. Here it is. We should come find it down here. The Briggs Initiative. John Briggs was forced to drop out of the 1978 race for California governor, but received enthusiastic support for Proposition 6, dubbed the Briggs Initiative. The proposed law would have made firing gay teachers and any public school employees who supported gay rights mandatory. Briggs' messages supported Proposition 6 through persuasive messages supporting Proposition 6 throughout California, and Harvey Milk attended every Briggs event hosted. Milk campaigned against the bill throughout the state as well, and swore that even if Briggs won California, he would not win San Francisco. So, in their numerous debates, which towards the end had been honed to quick back-and-forth banter, Briggs maintained that homosexual teachers wanted to abuse and recruit children. Milk responded with statistics complied by law enforcement that provided evidence that pedophiles identified primarily as heterosexual, and dismissed Briggs' assertion with one-liner jokes. If it were true that children mimic their teachers, you'd sure have a hell lot of more nuns running around. Anyway, so not only did we see gay people fired from their jobs in government due to the Lavender Scare, but they also tried to, due to these perceptions of homosexual people in media and the stereotype of them being pedophiles, they tried to purge them from even being public school teachers, because they thought that their proximity to children would, 1, make them prey upon children sexually, and 2, turn the kids gay. And so you see a lot of the modern talk about like, hey, we're doing gay acceptance today, and we're talking about how being gay is okay, and you'll see teachers talk about, and you'll see a lot of conservative hosts talk about like, we need to stop forcing this on kids. And I really think that is a modern evolution of the Briggs Initiative. The idea that homosexuality will be taught to the children, because if they learn gay people are okay, then they'll turn gay, and the teachers are pedophile, is a modern evolution of the Briggs Initiatives of the 1970s, which Harvey Milk, thankfully, I will remind you, actually stopped the Briggs Initiative by his campaigning. Another reason why he's an amazing civil rights icon. But let me also say that it wasn't just homosexuals. If you read this again, which I will, and any public school employees who supported gay rights. So not only was it homosexuals, but if you just had a favorable position on the gay community, then you could not become a teacher or any type of a public school employee. So it's not about turning the kids gay. It was not only about that. It was also about punishing people for even having a positive view about homosexuality. I guess they could have also made the argument that somebody possibly speaking positively of a homosexual could make kids be like, "Oh, I want to join the gay lifestyle." But of course, you know, homophobia is not supposed to make sense, is it? Because it doesn't make sense. You can't make sense out of nonsense. Now let's finish the film.
They only casually noticed the two boys that raced by in the afternoon traffic, and they didn't pay much attention to the car that drew up shortly afterwards until the man called them over. Had two boys been by on bicycles? The boys nodded they had. Could they recognize them if they saw them again? Well, Denny guessed he could. Then hop in, the man said. Those are stolen bikes. Without giving it another thought, Denny got in and the car sped away. Jerry watched. He'd been told many times, if a friend got in a car with a stranger, to write down the license number. It didn't seem to apply, but, well, fortunately, he marked it down. When he delivered a paper to Denny's house, he asked his mother if they'd caught the boys that had stolen the bicycles. Denny hadn't returned, so he told her the story and gave her the paper with the license number. Being a careful parent, she decided to call the police. Jerry supplied the necessary information, and the stranger's car was quickly spotted. It was a good example of how important it is to always get the license number and description of any stranger who takes a young person off alone, no matter what they tell you. Public restrooms can often be a hangout for the homosexual. Bobby and his friends hadn't noticed the man who had been in the restroom when they changed, and as it was late, he suggested they take the shortcut under the pier, but the others preferred to take the more traveled way home. When Bobby recognized the stranger as the man in the restroom, the shortcut under the pier didn't seem like a good idea at all. After all, it's more fun to stay with your friends anyway. Bobby had made a wise decision. It may have saved.
Every single depiction in this film of gays has been predatory, has been violent, has been pedophilic, or has just been absolutely terrible. There's no possible way to show a gay person in a positive light whatsoever in this film.
Saved his life. The decision is always yours, and your whole future may depend on making the right one. So no matter where you meet a stranger, be careful if they are too friendly, if they try to win your confidence too quickly, and if they become overly personal. One never knows when the homosexual is about. He may appear normal, and it may be too late when you discover he is mentally ill. So keep with your group, and don't go off alone with strangers unless you have the permission.
So everyone, remember, boys beware. The queers will bring scare. Wonderful. What a great movie, huh?